Hi, my name is Kirstyn Wyatt, and this is my video application for the Rural School Leadership Academy. I'm a Spanish teacher at a junior high in Northeast Arkansas. Before I get started on the interview questions, I want to thank you for taking the time to review my application. So I guess I'll go ahead and jump in with the questions. All right. First question, many career opportunities are available to you. Why did you originally enter the field of education, and why do you now want to lead others in a school? I will start with why I originally entered the field of education. When I was in high school, I started tutoring some of my peers and at the request of their parents. And after those tutoring sessions, they would give me money. And it was very strange for me at first. I came home and I told my dad, hey, Dad, they paid me and it feels really weird. And he said, well, is it weird because they're your peers or because you didn't feel like you were working? And I said, I didn't feel like I was working. And he laughed a little bit and said, maybe you should make a career out of that. Teaching is something you might be good at. I kind of brushed that off until a few years later, and I took a Spanish class at my high school and absolutely fell in love with it. I took 2 years of high school Spanish, and then my family decided to take a kind of a visionary trip down to a small city in Mexico to see how our church could potentially work with an orphanage down there, and decided that in my 2 years of high school Spanish, I should be an adequate interpreter for us. And it's funny looking back, but it was a great experience. When we landed in Monterey, I assumed there would be some English services since it was labeled an international airport, and at the time, there was no English written anywhere and no pictures to help us once we got off the plane in Mexico. And so I took a moment and I found someone, and in what I'm sure was very, very broken Spanish, I asked someone where the baggage claim was. And between my attempt at Spanish and this man being a native Spanish speaker, he responded to me and I got us over to the baggage claim. And in that moment, there was just kind of this click moment for me that, whoa, I'm communicating with someone in their language. I don't need an interpreter. I don't need someone else to do this for me. Everyone needs to be able to do this. And from that moment, I think I just knew that I wanted to be a teacher specifically of a foreign language. And so I went to school for that and fell more and more in love with what actually is involved with teaching, breaking down those cultural barriers specifically with language, teaching students that someone who speaks another language is not less intelligent because they don't speak your language. They just can't communicate their intelligence to you. And so being able to not only do something that I would do for free, but do something that has an impact on students that's long-lasting and that's bigger than me, and teaching them to appreciate other cultures and not put up a mental wall to those who are different from them is what really just pulled my heart into education. And it's come up a few times since I'm so passionate about foreign language, why I want to lead others. I am from the conservative South, and those cultural barriers have presented themselves over and over again, where things such as words like Mexican have become a dirty word, and people try to use Spanish instead of using the correct term wherever that person is from. And I feel as though I can have a greater impact on not just my classroom of students, but on students as a whole. I've witnessed so many injustices as a teacher, and I really believe that as a leader, as a principal, or as any sort of educational leader for that matter, I would be able to be the person who takes action for change for these kind of situations. For example, I've witnessed just complete inequitable discipline wherein rich white kids, and maybe not rich white kids is the best way to say that, wealthy, upper class, non-minority students don't get the same sort of discipline that a low-income student of color would get. We had a student bring a machete to school on campus, And because that student was from a wealthy, well-known, non-minority family, there was no punishment. The student faced no repercussions, and everything just kind of got swept under a rug because they were one of those kids. And I also saw in that very same school year a student of color brought a pocket knife on campus for work because the student was wearing the work pants that they were going to go to and work after school. And the student got suspended for 2 weeks. Both students gave up the object in question and were completely cooperative with the school, but one student got no discipline and the other student got 2 weeks of suspension. I have just witnessed a lot of that, how the school's vision doesn't align up with their actions. And these kind of things don't just happen in urban schools, and I don't think that most of modern America realizes that these things also happen in rural schools. They happen in small town Arkansas. And I feel as though I can be an agent for change for that. And really, bigger than that, I think leadership puts you in a position that you're a leader of leaders. It gives you the opportunity to do something greater than yourself and to be an active part of establishing social justice, specifically in rural education. Another reason I want to go into leadership is that at the secondary level, there are not a lot of women. I firmly believe that this is teaching our young women that only men should lead once you get past elementary school or middle school. And I really firmly believe that we're teaching them something that's incorrect. Women need to have more place in leadership and be just those role models for those 7 through 12 students who see it all throughout their elementary years, and then they get to 7th grade and all of a sudden there is an overpowering male presence where they also deserve and need to see women in those roles as well. Question 2. Take some time reading and reflecting Teacher America's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the guiding questions. What do these documents make you think or wonder, and how do these ideas align or misalign with your experience in education so far? These guidelines make me think a lot about the values of this culture in which I live. Especially in rural schools in Arkansas, there are a lot of very conservative religious values that don't always align with inclusivity, with equity, or with diversity. And it makes me wonder how I can overcome those barriers so that I break down those injustices for those students. And to be entirely honest, these documents don't align with my prior experience. As I kind of mentioned previously, some schools will have a vision that says that they want to treat all students as though they were valuable, and then they'll make rules or make decisions that show students of color, LGBT students, students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, that they are not as valuable as these students who are more wealthy or more privileged. I really feel as though these documents more align with my personal vision. There's really a massive difference between having a vision and acting on a vision. Prior schools that I've been a part of, I simply couldn't act upon my vision because it didn't align with their actions. It aligned with their vision, but it maybe not so much aligned with their actions, such as a school dress code that was suddenly enforced that students couldn't wear any headbands unless it was religious headwear. And all of a sudden, my black students had to either make sure their hair was done, something that they may or may not have been able to afford, or go to school and not feel as though they're valued for who they are because they couldn't style their hair back with a headband. And it really just showed them who was more valuable to the school. Now I'm in a little bit different place with a rural group of students, and I'm able to align my actions with my personal vision. Specifically, I've made my actions loud and clear to my students about inclusivity in the classroom and in the school. The current district has mostly been small town USA with not a lot of diversity, but it's growing in leaps and bounds. And with that, we're becoming more and more diverse. Being rural for so long, though, has created some misunderstandings, especially with my LGBT students. I try to take the opportunity to call out any misunderstanding or injustice and make sure that students understand how to include each other in the classroom. Specifically, I have a student who uses the word gay instead of stupid, and when that kind of thing happens, I talk to him one-on-one and say, hey, you know, what cultural situation are we faced with that makes it okay for us to do that? And for the most part in that school, that would be okay, but just because of the societal norms, whereas it's really not. And so we take a second and we step back and we talk about it and decide how can we better talk about things instead of labeling something in such a derogatory fashion. So just making sure that a school's vision is aligned with its action, I think, is a great application of those of that commitment that TFA has made to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The third question: if you could talk to your current principal, the custodian at your school, a colleague in your department, and a student's parent or family member, and ask them to describe you in one word, what would those words be, and why do you think those people would choose those words? This was a tough question. Good job, guys. It really made me think about the perception that other people have of me. I will just kind of go in order. I think my principal, if he were to describe me in one word, I think he would say ambitious. I took this job very quickly. It was less than a 24-hour process between, hey, we'd like you, there's a job open, to we'd like to hire you. And I kind of jumped at the opportunity because it's such a phenomenal growing school district. And since I've gotten there, I have hit the ground running and I have taken on extra responsibilities. I jumped at the chance to join our teacher leader program where I get the chance to take on some additional duties and see how the school is run, as well as kind of help out with school events and daily administration duties. And on top of that, I'm finishing my national board candidacy and taking classes to better my leadership skills, specifically in secondary education, and trying to just do my best for my students and take on what I can in order to improve myself and improve the education that my students and the students at my school receive. I definitely think if I were to text him right now and say, hey, describe me in one word, my principal would text back, ambitious. Maybe in all caps. I don't know. The next person on the list is the custodian. The custodial staff in our school is, they are primarily Spanish speaking. And so I think the word that they would use to describe me is inclusivo. I try my best to communicate clearly and compassionately, and in the language that they're speaking amongst themselves. The custodian specifically on my hallway is super kind and friendly and only speaks to the other staff members a little bit, but I'm able to have more meaningful conversations because I realized running into her and some of her coworkers that they speak Spanish with each other, and I was able to jump in and try to be a little bit more inclusive because those people keep our school running. We have those who are on staff, we have those who are faculty, and then we have those who are making sure that our space is clean, and they take care of us really well. Next person, a colleague. In my particular school, I am the Spanish department. I meet in my professional learning communities with the English department, and I think if you were to ask them to describe me in one word, they would describe me as adventurous. I have a board in my classroom that says it's our adventure board. And I encourage students to snap a photo anytime they try something new, do something new, go somewhere new. Anything that is different for them is an adventure. And so I actively encourage my students to try new things and to be adventurous, go new places, even if it's going to a different restaurant when they wanted to go to their normal restaurant. I try to encourage them to be adventurous and try new things, and that adventure doesn't always mean that you're getting on a plane and going somewhere, because not all of my students can afford that. But an adventure can be asking your parents to drive down a different road on the way home and seeing what's down there. I also make it a point to talk to different students in the hallway when I'm on duty down in the English hallway. I think I give the impression of an adventurer, and that's something that I really cherish and appreciate that I think my colleagues would say about me. I think that the English department would call me adventurous. Final person on here is a student parent. I think they would call me resourceful. I couldn't put takes initiative into one word, and so I decided to use resourceful. Whenever I have a student issue or something I need to talk to the parents about, or maybe praise for a student, I have found a way to communicate with the parents that is easiest for them. A lot of my parents work during the day, and so I'm able to text message them from Google Voice, and it goes straight through the school system, and they can text message me back, they can call me, and I can get to them immediately, and in whatever means of communication, through whatever means of communication works best for them. Most of my parents don't check their emails, especially during the workday. They've given their personal email to the school when they're at work. Other ones can't answer the phone while at work. I understand that. I mostly can't either because I'm teaching. But I've used my resources to be able to communicate with them at the time that they need to communicate, and in a way that doesn't disturb their day but still gets the point across and gets communication happening both ways. Yeah, I think that's how each person in the school would describe me. I think that wraps it up. Again, just wanted to thank you guys for taking the time to review my application. I would be absolutely thrilled to be able to take part in the Rural School Leadership Academy and gain those extra skills and the ability and the experience, really, of learning more about what works and what makes leadership effective in rural schools. Thank you.